Yes. So how about we give a big thank you to the Wi-Fi folks that were in here earlier getting us ready for the day. If you didn't have coffee, the 1, 2, 3 probably got you going, right? So let's do a big round of applause for all the Wi-Fi. My name is Ann Hinton, and I'm the Director of the Department of Aging and Adult Services. It is really with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to San Francisco's Aging and Disability Technology Summit, the first one that we have held in San Francisco. And what a day this is going to be. You've looked at the program, you know it is chock full of speakers and interactive devices and all kinds of things to make this day actually pretty magical. I wanted to start by introducing our interpreters. Could those folks raise their hands so folks know where they are in the room? We've got translation going on for anyone who needs it, and there's folks outside that can hook you up in the most appropriate way for that. I was also asked to ask all of you if you could move towards the center, because as you can tell, we got a lot of folks coming into the room from outside, and we want them to be able to not have to climb over everyone so they can take a seat. Today's event is about connectivity, connection through technology. And in order for that to happen, it is really essential that city leaders understand the importance of connectivity, the complexity of it, and the why of it. It's important that all of that be understood. Our mayor understands all of that and more. He understands the importance of it, the complexity of it, the why of it, and if you've been following the news at all, you know through what you've read that he's been very, very forceful in moving forward in this area. It's my pleasure to introduce the mayor of San Francisco, Ed Lee.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to City Hall. All right. Well, your board president, David Chu, and I were just discussing what game we're going to play on each other when we go outside and work on your computers. So we're going to look forward to doing that. But I want to thank Ann Hinton and the Aging and Adult Services Department for her wonderful leadership. Third summit. Thank you very much, Ann. Congratulations, because you've been not only engaging our communities, Ann, but your department has always been looking out for things that would help increase capacity, connectivity, and I think this year's focus and this summit's focus on creativity and technology and making sure that we use a wonderful grant from our federal partners and Department of Commerce to help us engage healthier, happier, and more connections with our aged community and persons with disabilities. I think it's a wonderful goal, and we have a lot to talk about today. I also want to welcome all of the businesses that have been partners with this. You know, when it comes to technology, we in the government can never do it alone. And whether it's federal or state or local government, we've got to work with our private partners so that all of the media connections can happen. So I want to just give a shout out to Comcast, Verizon, the San Francisco Health Plan, SCAN Health Plan, Unlock, our media partners, all the other organizations and volunteers who are working along with us to help our seniors and help our people with disabilities connect up. This summit, it really is to launch a new program, our SF Connected program. And this allows us to work with all of our seniors in so many locations throughout the city, get connected up, to provide a higher level of digital literacy and broadband adoption, whether it's in our community centers, our housing authority centers, our low-income service centers, the like. We are announcing today that we're going to complete with this grant 53 locations throughout the whole city. 53 of them. We've already got 28 of them set up, and by the end of the month, or early next month, we'll have an additional 25. And that's going to be a lot of places where our vulnerable populations can become that much more digitally literate, and they can benefit from the innovations of social media, have their health resources and information online, and also be able to play some games as well as visit your family online as well. You know, when you get more digitally connected, you're going to be able to find that there are going to be great ways to talk to your doctor or your nurse. You're going to be able to access health resources that much easier that's online. You're going to be able to set up email accounts for yourself. And then those of you, and I know some of you here might be owners of Facebook, you can be billionaires this Friday, right? How many of you are going to be billionaires? Well, you're going to also be able to enjoy Facebook page. You're going to be able to send a tweet out. Anybody here tweet before? I didn't up until a few months ago. Well, you're going to be able to also, and one of the most valuable things is we tried it, Anita and I, my wife tried it this weekend, you're going to be able to make free video calls. How would you like to talk to family and friends on video, on your phone or on your computer? Be able to see family members and friends talk with you right there live. You know, it used to be kind of Star Trek-y to be able to do that. You can do that these days very affordable if you train yourself on some of the equipment that we have and the resources that we have, and be able to do that from the very senior centers that you live and work in and enjoy yourselves in. You're going to be able even to read a book online, or be able just to have a game and download a game and play with your friends as well. We're all lucky to live in San Francisco because so many of our technology companies have located their headquarters here in San Francisco. And because they're located here, we can always ask them to help us do a favor here or there and make sure that no one is left out, because that's what we do in government. David Chu and I come from backgrounds where we don't want to leave anybody behind. We want everybody to enjoy the richness of technology. We want them to enjoy the economy in San Francisco. And that's why we're working so hard to make sure our central marketplace is welcoming of all these technology companies, making sure that we can work with other cities. I am very lucky to be part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and they allowed me to represent San Francisco as an innovative center for all the rest of the cities across the country. So we get to compare information there. One of these days, I'll get to talk to you while I'm in Washington, D.C., and you can hear what I'm saying across there, so that we can enjoy wherever I go. You'll know I'll be working and not fooling around, right? Finally, we also are using technology to join our private companies in hiring San Franciscans. Hopefully some of your kids, some of your grandkids as well, are going to enjoy some of these great jobs in San Francisco, because the companies that are here, many of them have agreed to use the virtual hiring practice called hiresf.org and share the technology to hire online San Franciscans. So we're doing that right here in our great city. I've got a Chief Innovation Officer, Jay Nath, who's working right in my office. He keeps a very good connection for both me and members of the Board of Supervisors to share in what of our technologies, what are they all doing in San Francisco, what are their latest discoveries that we can possibly use to help improve our city. Finally, as some of you know, I celebrated my 60th birthday last week, and my staff gave me an iPad, and I'm looking at it. I might have to go and join your classes in order to appreciate all the applications that we have there. So don't be surprised if the guy next to you has a mustache. When I leave here this morning, I'll be going to Rosa Parks Senior Center. We just spent $2 million of federal monies to redo that whole senior center and allow that to be one of the sites that will host the technology advances that you're experimenting with today. Our own residents in every location of our senior centers are going to enjoy the technology advances that we have as a society. This is why we work in a great city like San Francisco. We want everybody connected. We ought to make sure San Francisco Connected program reaches all of our seniors, all of the people with disabilities. There's no reason why people should not be connected up. And therefore, everybody gets to enjoy this fantastic technology that we have. This is what makes a great city, and this is why I enjoy working with you and being the mayor of our great San Francisco city. Thank you, Ann Hinton. Congratulations on your third summit. Thank you very much. And if I can, if Brian Roberts is in the room, thank you for writing that grant. That's a wonderful grant to get us to where we are today. Thank you very much.
So it's true, you know, there's a lot of wonderful things about San Francisco. There's all of us, there's all that marvelous food, and we have terrific leadership. And it's important that we have good leadership in the departments, in the mayor's office, in our budget office, but likewise, really important that we have great leadership at our Board of Supervisors. David Chu is the president of our board, and he knows the issue of technology, plus many other things, very, very intimately. He probably knows more than any of us will ever likely to know. We might wish to know it, but we're probably not going to because he comes from the technology world. He was the founder and chief operating officer of Grassroots Enterprise, an online communications company. He's also a member of the city's Committee on Information, and he is which sets policies within the city and provides the overall direction for our city and county's technology community. He has joined with Mayor Lee to attract technology companies to San Francisco and to connect them to our community. It's really with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce to you President of our Board of Supervisors, David Chu.
Good morning. Thank you, Ann. Good morning, San Francisco. Are we all ready to get connected today? Great. I wanted to be here this morning in part because my own start in technology actually happened in this very building. 13 years ago, I went to a meeting of the Board of Supervisors, and I ran into a classmate of mine. And the two of us started talking about, and this is during the first internet revolution, a Web 1.0 world. We thought, is there a way for technology to be used to better connect people? This became the genesis of a company that I helped to start. And one thing we realized during that first .com revolution was how many people, though, were unfortunately not connected. Whether they be members of immigrant communities, whether they be members of various ethnic and diverse communities, and we definitely knew that there are many seniors and many members of our disabled communities who were not connected. And I want to thank Ann Hinton, and I want to thank the Department on Aging for everything that you guys are doing to make sure that all of San Francisco is connected. The mayor talked about all of the things that could happen once people get online. You can get information about healthcare, which could make sure that it saves your lives or the lives of those who you love. You can get information about how to better use your money, how to invest your money, how to save your money. You can get information about how to learn another language, about how to make sure that you are continuing to grow at every stage of your life. And as the mayor said, you can also learn how to play games with your children and your grandchildren. It took me about 5 times to get my mother on email. But now that she is on email, she can tell me what to do from 3,000 miles away. And that is a good thing. And I think one of the most exciting things about this technology revolution is how it changes constantly. When I was here 13 years ago, I didn't have this, nor did I have this, and yet we know every single year there are new gadgets, there are new devices, there are new ways for us to stay connected, new ways for us to learn, new ways for us to be part of the San Francisco community. And by all of you being here physically in this space, I know that you're going to work together to figure out how, as a city, we are the most connected city in the entire world. Thank you very much for being here.
So we just have a few more people that we want to thank. Can you hear? We just have a few more people that I want to thank this morning before we head out to have all of our fun. And that's the planning committee. And I don't know how many of them are in the room because they were also tasked with doing volunteer work today, not just planning the event. But just to mention their names, we have Margaret O'Sullivan, Bill Haskell, Ella Lee, Valerie Vieira, Brian Roberts, Cami Griffiths, Sybil Boutier, Stella Chu and Denise Chung, David Baker and Heidi Zuhl. Are any of you in the room? If you are, please stand. And let's give a round of applause. Now, every event really needs to have a planning committee, and then you have those folks that do. I'm kind of known in my office for having these ideas, but ideas are no good unless you've got folks who can really take that idea and run with it and put it together and make a day like today happen. And so I really want to now, I think, focus on the folks who have coordinated this whole day for us. And Dolores McGee, Margaret Gray, Marcia Karen Holt, Joan Teeter, Mira Luna, Janice Kemp, Jennifer Walsh, Judy Gaddis, Candace Smith. Any of you in the room, or are you all out being busy in those other spots? If you are here, please stand up. And a round of applause. So all of these folks are listed in your book, and you all have name tags, and so do they. And as you go out throughout the day, if you see any of these people, I just really encourage you to thank them for all the work that they've done, because it's been an enormous amount of work to pull today off. But there are two people that I want to really single out for today's event, and that's Marie Jobling and Judy Otta. So you know how you read in the paper about those famous folks in technology? There are those names, right? Right? Those companies and those names that we read about every day. But we should all hope for having one of those famous people in our life, and that's who Marie and Judy really are. These are the two women who have, I think, single-handedly moved me into social networking, kicking and fighting the whole way. Because I wasn't born into technology, I really had to be dragged there. But Marie and Judy have really seen the relevance of what social media, what technology can do for all of us, this ability really to connect us, to make sure that we don't miss our families in another part of the world. They have managed to figure out ways that when it comes budget time, to use it in its most effective way. So again, if you see Marie or Judy today, because I don't think either one of them are in the room, they're out. There's Judy. Say, there she is. A round of applause for Judy. She also, I have to tell you, makes the best brittle that you'll ever taste in your life, so okay. And Marie's not in the room, but really Marie is the woman behind today's event. She also helped us plan last year's Healthy Aging events. So have fun. I'm reminded that we really are here today to have fun, and I think our next speakers are really going to show us the way in that, and then we'll have a whole afternoon of playing and getting on with things. It's really my privilege now to introduce a lady to you who I have watched really from afar. I've really just had the pleasure of meeting Belva Davis in the last few years. I can remember when I first saw her on TV and thought that here's a woman just filled with dignity and compassion and so articulate. that she really helped us to understand what was happening in the world. You know, most of you know that Belva Davis was the first black female journalist in the West, and she really did change the face and the focus of news. She has recently written a book that is very important, I think, both for her but for us, because it really tells the story of her life and all that has gone on in the world that she has lived in. Maya Angelou was quoted as saying, "No people can say they understand the times in which they have lived unless they have read this book." And the name of that book, just in case you haven't read it yet, is Never in My Wildest Dreams. Belva Davis.
Which mic shall I use? No. Listen, thank you very much for that generous round of applause. And I'm going to start out by boring you, telling you what my morning has been like, because I am just now admitting that I have to do something about my life. Number one, without my cell phone today, I probably wouldn't have made it here, because I was in Petaluma, where I have a house that I'm trying to put on the market, and the traffic from Petaluma to here was over 2 hours. In the meantime, I wanted to let people here know what was going on with me. So with my cell phone, I called a friend who called somebody, they called somebody, and I made it here because she knew how to use her computer and resources. So I'm with you. I need more lessons, obviously. I had the phone, but not the knowledge. So we're going to do something about that in our household. We're also doing something about living that far away from the center of everything, which is right here in this city. So you want to buy a house in Petaluma in the country with 2.5 acres? I got one for you. Well, it is a morning as we all evolve. And as my husband and I get closer to 80, both of us have retired 2 times already. We're now getting ready for a 3rd go-around. But remember, you can do as many as you like to, because you're the only one who can say, I'm tired of doing that. I don't want to do it anymore. And so, that's right. Well, we have some people with real knowledge and not chit-chat to come up and tell us how we can age at the same time that we are gaining insight, knowledge, and exposure to a vast universe of information and opportunities. So we're going to start with Derek Lamb. He is an Aging Service Program Specialist for the newly reorganized Administration for Community Living here in Region 9, the Department of Health and Human Services. Derek has over 23 years of experience in the field of aging and long-term support services. He served as the Aging Service Program Specialist since 19, okay? Not a kid would come up here and say 2006 and say 1906. But Derek was appointed as the Executive Director of the San Francisco Department of Aging and Adult Services in 2002 and to 2005. So we ask him to join us here with some wise remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Well, on behalf of Mr. David Ishida, Regional Administrator for the newly created Administration for Community Living, I'd like to congratulate City and County of San Francisco for launching the 2012 Aging and Disability Technology Summit. Well, it was approximately a month ago. Secretary Kathleen Sebelius of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced the creation of this new federal agency, and that is the Administration for Community Living. And in her words, she quoted, "For too long, too many Americans have faced the impassable choice between moving to an institution or living at home without the long-term services and supports they need." And so indeed the goal of this new Administration for Community Living will be to help people with disabilities as well as seniors to live productive, satisfying lives. Now, as you may be aware, the common interests of the aging and disability populations have been recognized actually at the local and state levels for quite some time now. So the mechanisms for providing supports that facilitate community living have been really brought together into local and state agencies, such as the San Francisco Department of Aging and Adult Services that serve both populations since year 2000. Yet at the federal level, policy development, community outreach, and program implementation related to aging and disability services across the nation was fragmented across the Department of Health and Human Services until now. Now, the Obama administration, as well as Secretary Sebelius, have long been committed to promoting community living and finding new means to help ensure that we support seniors and people with disabilities need to live in the community are accessible. So approximately 3 years ago, if you remember, our nation commemorated the 10th anniversary of the Olmstead decision, and at which time President Obama launched the Community Living Initiative on June 22, 2009, to reaffirm the administration's commitment to vigorous enforcement of civil rights for Americans with disabilities and to ensuring the fullest inclusion of all people in the life of our nation. Now, on the very same day, Secretary Sebelius set up an interagency coordinating council co-led by Assistant Secretary Kathy Greenlee, as well as the Director of the Office on Disability, Mr. Henry Claypool, to look at solutions that address barriers to community living for individuals with disabilities and to give people more control over their lives and the supports they need. So now talking about this new agency, we are bringing together the Administration on Aging, which you may be very familiar with, the Office on Disability, as well as the Administration on Developmental Disabilities into one single agency that supports both cross-cutting initiatives as well as efforts focused on the unique needs of individual groups, such as seniors with dementia or children with developmental disabilities. The day-to-day management of the programs under the Administration on Aging and the Administration of Developmental Disabilities will relatively remain unchanged, with the current program staff retaining the assignments. Kathy Greenlee, as I mentioned, the Assistant Secretary for Aging, is now the administrator for the new federal agency. Henry Claypool, the former Director of the Office of Disability, is now the Principal Deputy Administrator, remains as a senior advisor to Secretary Sebelius on issues pertaining to disabilities, so that the disability community will have direct access to the Secretary. Sharon Lewis is the Commissioner for the Administration for now the newly formed Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And then on the aging side, Mr. Edwin Walker serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Aging, advocating on behalf of older Americans. Now, this new federal agency will seek to enhance and improve the broad range of support that individuals may need to live with respect and dignity as full members of our communities. These needs go well beyond healthcare and include the availability of appropriate housing, employment, education, meaningful relationships, as well as social participation. In addition, we'll be working with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to develop, refine, and strengthen policies that promote independent living among all populations, especially those served by Medicaid. We will also work with CMS to promote home and community-based services and supports. So last but not least, I will be remiss if I forget to mention that May is also the time of the year when communities across the nation come together to celebrate the Older Americans Month, a proud tradition that shows our nation's commitment to recognizing the contributions and achievements of our seniors. The theme for this year is Never Too Old to Play, and we want to encourage older Americans to stay engaged, active, and involved in your own lives and in your own communities. So in closing, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at your summit. We wish everyone the very best and we want to commend San Francisco for, again, launching this important event today, and that is connecting senior and people with disabilities to a world of possibilities. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, I think this program certainly is set up in the right order. Learn something about your topic, and then when you go over to play, you'll understand the importance of what you've learned, and you can feel smarter about it. So we have a lot of smart people that are going to be on the stage here. Right now, it's Ann Neville's turn. She directs the State Broadband Initiative at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. In that capacity, she's responsible for both the development of the National Broadband Map and grants to states to support broadband data collection and the state's broadband capacity and leadership efforts. Now, this is a very important job, believe me. I belong to a committee in Washington called the Minority Media Coalition, and our job is to stay on the federal agencies to make sure that minorities, those who consider themselves elderly and in need of help, and the disabled are included in this new world. So please welcome Ann Neville.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good. Well, thank you everyone here today for the Aging and Disability Technology Summit. It is an honor for us to be here today to support this important event for the City and County of San Francisco. My name is Ann Neville, and I direct the State Broadband Initiative at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which is in Washington, D.C. Our agency, NTIA, is part of the U.S. Commerce Department, and it is the executive branch agency that is in charge of advising the President on telecommunications and information policy issues. We are at the forefront of the Obama administration's push to establish a broadband foundation needed to support the innovation economy in the United States. We are looking to produce better and new jobs and positions, and a position to ensure that America remains at the forefront of the economy in the 21st century. We are working to ensure that all Americans have the resources and the skills necessary to fully share in all of the possibilities, civic, social, and economic, all of these made possible by the internet, and that's one of the reasons we're here today. Key to this effort for the administration is the Broadband Technology Opportunities Program, or BTOP. This program was established in 2009 by the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, and it's administered by NTIA. We have nearly $4 billion invested in roughly 230 projects across the country, all of these aimed at expanding broadband access and adoption in the country. And I want to just tell you a little bit about the program and then tell you about why we care so much about this issue. So we have the BTOP infrastructure projects. These projects are building broadband networks in areas that are currently underserved. They're making sure that hospitals, schools, and other vital community institutions have the access that they need to make sure that they can compete in this economy. These projects are also going to spur private sector investment, and they're also going to increase availability for consumers at home. We also have BTOP computer centers. They're located in schools, in libraries, in fire stations, community points all over the country. And they are providing broadband access to people who are hunting for jobs, for people who want to go online, but don't have access at home because maybe they don't have a computer or maybe they don't know how to use the internet. And we have the BTOP Sustainable Broadband Adoption Projects, like the one we are all part of here today. These projects are teaching computer and digital literacy skills to people who are not yet online and helping them to fully participate in a job market and a society that now takes these skills for granted. So our portfolio of projects addresses barriers to access and adoption, and provides broadband education, training, and equipment to all of these communities. I'm here today because the City of San Francisco was awarded a nearly $8 million award as part of the Sustainable Broadband Adoption Program. Today's summit, the first of its kind, is a real milestone for this award and is something that we can look at across the country as a model. The grant is representative of 43 innovative broadband adoption projects currently being carried out across the nation. As the mayor mentioned earlier, San Francisco is establishing or expanding computer labs in 53 locations around the city. These labs are operated by some 30 different nonprofit organizations, housing providers, and community partners. The centers offer accessible touchscreen PCs with software that includes Zoom Text, Brain Fitness, Microsoft Office, and photo-video software in 6 different languages: English, Chinese, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Korean. In addition, San Francisco has 8 subrecipients, more partners, some of whom are also providing multilingual volunteer teachers and one-on-one coaches in areas such as social media, health information, and job skills. This is truly a remarkable partnership, and it's an amazing accomplishment, Anne. And San Francisco really is in good company in this regard. NTIA has invested $450 million for public computer centers and sustainable broadband adoption programs throughout the country. Several of these also focus on older Americans, and virtually all are providing public workstations equipped for people with disabilities. Collectively, the results of this work in San Francisco and in cities and states across the country will create templates for success that organizations around the rest of the country can replicate in order to help their communities move online. And getting communities online is the reason that we're so invested in this effort. It is critical to our future because broadband drives economic growth and broadband creates jobs. It provides the infrastructure that communities need to attract innovative businesses in a competitive global landscape. Broadband also allows businesses of all sizes to reach markets around the world. People who are aging or disabled have unfortunately historically been at the margins of new technologies when they are introduced. Today, as broadband internet brings expanded opportunities in healthcare, in education, and civic participation, projects like this one here in San Francisco are critical to making sure that all communities have access to life-changing technologies. High-speed internet connections make it possible for patients in rural areas to consult with medical specialists who are hundreds of miles away, for students to take online classes at universities that are across the country, and for governments to deliver services more efficiently and more easily to their constituents. For seniors, especially those whose families may live in different states or in different countries, broadband allows families to bond together in a way that telephone just never did. My own parents-in-law live in Mexico City, and we're lucky because we both have broadband connections in our home. And a few weeks ago, we got on Skype, we set up the computer in our kitchen, and they set it up in their dining room, and they instructed my husband and me as we tried to make one of their favorite meals. And they kind of scoffed when we were beating the dough too much, and they smiled when we had this kind of almost round tortilla. And for us, it was the best way that we could connect because they live really far away and we don't get to see them otherwise. And so it's an important way for all of us to be able to connect with our families and with our communities. For Americans living with disabilities, many of whom are also aging Americans, broadband and computers, however, can provide even more critical tools for health and wellness. They allow someone with a speech impairment to email her doctor, a person who is mobility limited to attend classes online, and someone else to work from home. In fact, according to the Center for Accessible Technology, 29% of people with disabilities would join the workforce if telecommuting were actually a viable option for them. Before even working from home, however, broadband is now a necessity for anyone who's searching for a job. Many job openings are only posted online. About 80% of Fortune 500 companies only accept job applications online. And about 60% of working Americans use the internet as an integral part of their job every single day. If you don't have broadband, you are increasingly cut off from these opportunities. And unfortunately, NTIA's own research shows that there are still too many Americans who are on the wrong side of this digital divide. In collaboration with the US Census Bureau, NTIA conducts some of the most extensive survey work on broadband adoption trends in the US. Our most recent survey was conducted in October of 2010, so not very long ago. It showed that 68% of Americans subscribe to broadband. That's up. 68% is up from 51% in 2007 and 64% in 2009. But that still leaves roughly 1/3 of Americans who don't have access to the internet at home. Also troubling, our survey reveals that there is still a substantial digital divide that breaks down along traditional racial, ethnic, age, and geographic lines, and by disability status. For example, 72% of white households had broadband access at home, compared with only 55% of African American households and 57% of Hispanic households. That's a 17 and 15-point difference. There's a similar divide between urban and rural America, where 70% of urban households have access at home, but only 57% of rural households are subscribing to broadband. Seniors and people with disabilities also have far lower rates of adoption than the country as a whole. Almost half of all households headed by someone with a disability did not have a computer. Compare that to only 20% of households that didn't have a computer if they were headed by someone without a disability. Similarly, 43% of homes headed by someone with a disability subscribed to broadband, compared to 72% of all homes, a 29-point difference. Our data also show that older Americans, particularly those 65 and older, are less likely to live in a home with a computer or to have broadband internet access at home. And what's more, as we looked further into this data, we found that when we looked at other socioeconomic factors, like income or education, it didn't fully explain the gap. Even after accounting for these for socioeconomic and geographic factors, African American and Hispanic households still lagged white households in broadband adoption by 11 percentage points. And rural households still lagged urban households by 5 percentage points. These ongoing disparities and our critical need for our nation's future to overcome them are why today's summit is so important. And the work that the city of San Francisco is doing and has already accomplished, it's why it's so important. Together with our grantees, we're on the front lines working to close these gaps and ensuring that no one is left behind out of this technical revolution. As of the end of 2011, BTOP grantees had installed or updated more than 45,000 miles of broadband telecommunications lines. They had upgraded and improved service to more than 6,000 anchor institutions, schools, libraries, hospitals across 35 different states. They'd installed more than 29,000 workstations in public computer centers, and they had produced what's really amazing, 260,000 new broadband subscribers, as we hope many of you here today will become. BTOP projects are reaching every state and territory across the U.S. And at NTIA, we are gratified to watch what this team has accomplished here in San Francisco. Like the BTOP program overall, this project represents critical investments in the future of our nation. Investments that are producing immediate benefits, but are also going to pay dividends for years to come. So thank you again for inviting us to be part of today's summit. It's truly an honor, and we look forward to continuing to see more great projects and more wonderful events like this here in San Francisco. Thank you.
Well, as the kids say, that's information you can use. Thank you so much, Anne. Our next speaker is the co-founder and chief scientific officer of Post-it Services. Post-it Science. Michael Merzenich heads the company's global team for more than 3 decades. Dr. Merzenich has been a leading pioneer in brain plasticity research, and in the late 80s, he was responsible for inventing something that I hope to own on my own once, an implant to improve my hearing. In 1996, Dr. Merzenich was the founder and CEO of Scientific Learning Corporation, which markets and distributes software that applies principles of brain science to brain plasticity to assist children with language learning and reading. We're proud to have him join us today to take part in this forum.
Thank you, Belva. I want to one-up the mayor and say that today is my 70th birthday. Still alive and raising Cain. I also want to say that I'm a proud citizen of this city, and in fact, a public servant at the University of California in this city for more than 45 years. And it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to be with you today. I want to say before I start that you should understand that I was permitted by the University of California on leaves of absence to found Posit Science Corporation. And I profit by what they do. And at the end, I'm going to talk about things that they do that a person could buy and understand that you can regard me as having a conflict of interest when I talk about things that I might profit by. So I just want you to know that. I also want to say that I'm going to talk about science because I am a nerd. It's official. And I want you to know that this science is all team science. Hundreds of scientists and engineers and professional clinicians of different kinds and other technologists have contributed to it. And I represent them to a large extent just because I'm the oldest, and certainly not because I'm the smartest. So I want to talk about your plastic brain. You have a very valuable asset inside your skull, and of course, and that's your brain, but it's very valuable, especially because it's plastic, and I want to tell you what that means. And I want to tell you a little bit about the science that shows us that plasticity is actually reversible. It can drive improvements in our abilities, or, alas, it can take us backward and take us in a negative direction. And I wanted to explain a little bit about what controls moving it in a positive or in a negative direction, because you sure do want to go in a positive direction. And finally, I want to talk about how we've tried to use this science with technology to help you sustain your brain health. And I'm going to give you a little advice about other things you can do, whether your problem is a disability or you have that common disability that applies to every one of us. You're simply having another birthday like I am today. Okay? And on the path to a better, healthier, safer, and hopefully happier life. So first of all, I want you to know that we used to think not very long ago, the predominant scientific view was that the brain grew up in early life. There was a period of maturation, and then it became fixed in its connectivity and its wiring, and then it was like a computer that was hardwired. And the only way it had to go from a very early point in life was downhill. Because it matured very early, basically, there were mysterious operating system and mysterious algorithms in it that accounted for your progression in learning. But as a physical and functional machine, it was static, and in fact, the only thing it did beyond a very early period in young childhood was to go south. Now, we now know that's completely false. We now know the brain actually is continuously changing, and we now know that each time you acquire a new skill or ability, improve at anything, the brain is actually changing its wiring. It's actually changing its functionality. It's actually specializing. And through that specialization, you account for the development of the skill or ability in play. Now, we know this occurs throughout life, in fact, to the very end of life, because we know we can improve our ability, or we know we can acquire a new skill to the end of life. And here we have an older woman who's acquired this skill in later life of basket weaving. And we know that because she's developed this special ability at this point in life, she's actually remodeled her brain, and that remodeling accounts for her developing obvious expertise. This is in play in our lives, throughout our lives. And because our lives are so richly varied from early childhood onward, we create, through billions of moments of brain change, an incredible individuation of ourselves. So that through these changes, we have special abilities shared by no one else in this room in exact form. We have special knowledge and understanding, things that have driven changes in our brain that are unlike in detail anyone else in this room, in fact, anyone else in the world. Because of this incredible gift, we're unique creatures in the world, unique individuated individuals, unlike any other person in detail, whoever was or ever will be. What a gift. And I realized as a young scientist that it was a challenge to try to understand how to control this great power, to drive brains in improving or strengthening or corrective directions for human benefit, with a special concern about people who are beginning to be in trouble because of an impairment or disability, or because something was happening to them in life, like they were merely getting older. So I want to talk a little bit about that science and how we try to apply it and use it to help people in need. First of all, I want to say that there's a very special thing about this plasticity as it relates to our cells, and that is to say it's constructed on the basis of moment-to-moment association of the things that go together or the things that are expected to occur in the next moment in time. And one thing that always goes with everything we feel, everything we do, every act we have, every thought, is a reference to the actor, to the player, to the doer, and that references to ourselves. And all of that drives massive plastic self-reference. We actually construct an enriched and strongly centered self, a person, in our brain through its changing itself in this powerful plastic way. We're also constructed through these same processes to attach to the other people, to the other things that we're close to in life. And that's the basis of the attachment of the mother to the child, or the child to the mother. Through millions of events of contact and interaction, all of those count in ways that actually grow the child into the person that is the mother. We are constructed to build attachments between mother and child, between friends, across our families and across our communities. This is something that we have to nourish, that we have to keep alive, that we have to keep healthy. But fortunately, we're constructed to do this in rich form by the way our brains are constructed, by the way we're constructed and live our lives. I want to say a special thing about plasticity, and that's the fundamental processes in play are reversible. And we've studied this extensively over the past 20 years and have richly demonstrated this to be so. And the studies begin by looking at something like an animal like a rat who might be in the prime of life, as in the upper left, or a rat who might be near the end of life below. We know this rat is old because he has white whiskers and white paws. So if you see a rat with white paws in your garage, I like to say, be nice to him. He's old. Of course, we're also even more interested in younger or older adult humans. And what we're interested in are differences in the brain operations of the old versus the young. And we've looked at this very richly in science. And in fact, we've looked at almost every way you can think of the operational characteristics of old and young brains. And what we see on a statistical average is that everything we look at is different. Now you could say, well, how many of those things that are different, physically, functionally, or chemically, really seem to be stronger, really seem to advantage the older brain? And the answer is none of them. Alas, old is slower, old is less precise, old is less refined, old is slowly deteriorating. Now there's good news to my story in a minute, so just wait for a minute. Okay? So then we ask, well, in how complex a way would we have to train the rat, or how complex a way could we have to train the human to reverse these characteristics that define him as old? Before I say that, let me just say something else about being old. You could say, well, if we're all deteriorating because we're older, why the heck do young people tolerate us? And the answer is simple. There's something that grows in us continuously across our life, undeniably grows in us, and that's knowledge. Older people know things. They've lived a life. They have experience. And not only do they have knowledge, they've manipulated that knowledge in complex ways in their brain, and they've come to intelligent conclusions about them. We call that wisdom. If you don't believe that, imagine a World War II with a Britain led by a 25-year-old Winston Churchill. Right? You need wisdom. You need wisdom. Societies need wisdom. They need knowledge. They value it. They value older people. But operationally, functionally, we've slowed down. Operationally, functionally, we are less precise. We remember less. We're less effective than we could or should be. Now, so we ask the question, how complicated would the training could be, and what of these things are reversible? And I'll tell you right now the answer. Everything is reversible. Everything is improvable. Every dimension of the physical, functional, chemical brain can be driven in a positive direction. It's all reversible. We're constructed to be basically reversible. So, first of all, we look at the processes of the brain as they relate to the alertness of the brain, and we see that they're recovered. We look at the processes that relate to the attentional control in the brain, and we see it's recovered or substantially restored. We look at the processes that relate to the accuracy with which the brain represents information that it's shipping around or receiving through our senses, and we see it's dramatically improved by training. We look at the processes that relate to speed, and we can speed up the brain almost always by 2 to 3-fold in an old animal or an old human, not so far away from the end of life. We look at an animal as it applies to dealing with complex information that's occurring across time, and it's improved. We look at the processes that control or relate to the flexibility of the operations of the brain, and they're dramatically improved. We look at the processes that relate to memory or the recording of information in the brain, and they're improved. Everything is improved. Physically, functionally, chemically improved. Now, this is obviously an asset that we should use, and the question is, well, how can we use it? But before I describe that, I want to say, how do you turn an old brain that appears to be deteriorating into a physically and functionally younger one? And the answer is, you train it. You have to train it appropriately. I mean, there's certain strategies that have to be applied, obviously. So then the question is, well, why does the brain deteriorate to start with? Why is it degrading? And the simple answer is, you reach a peak in about the 3rd decade of life on the statistical average, and then slowly, noisiness begins to creep into the processes of the brain. You can think of it as growing chatter in the brain. And we know that because we can add noise in the brain in various ways. In science, we wouldn't do this in a human, but we can do this in a rat. And when we do that, we see that over 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, a rat in the prime of life has a brain that looks like the brain of a rat near the end of life. Now, we see a very interesting thing when we look in detail at the brain near the end of life. We actually open up the characteristics of the brain near the end of life if we carry this to a far enough extent so that the brain looks very much like the brain of a child, of a baby that's had literally no experience. And if you think of these processes as being reversible, of course that's true. We come out of the noise, you could say, and we refine our processes, and we get more and more competent in processing information in detail and more accuracy, and we reach a peak, and then slowly we decline back in the direction from which we came. And the culprit, what's causing this, is the growth of noise in our brain. So the question is, where does the noise come from? Well, it comes from in part because in the early part of our life, we're continuously learning and refining, and then we reach a point where we're largely operating automatically. We're largely operating on automatic pilot without thinking very much about the details of what we're doing. So as an example, think of this guy sitting in an orchestra, a professional violinist, a master at controlling the fingering hand, a master in controlling the bow hand, a master listener. Now what happens if Bill, in his professional career, stops practicing? What if he doesn't practice for a month? Everyone around him knows it. They say, why isn't Bill practicing? What if Bill stops practicing for a year? Well, he's probably lost his job. No one would mistake him now for a true professional. Everyone's worried about Bill. Well, what if Bill didn't practice for 10 years? Well, he'd be a pretty good violinist. From our perspective, he'd be fun at parties, he could make us cry playing the violin, but no one would really mistake him for being a professional. Well, what if Bill decided that he'd like to reinitiate his practice and recover his career? Would Bill have a chance? Well, you all know he would. Bill would improve a lot. Bill might be able to reestablish a professional career. There are many instances of professional musicians who haven't played for a decade or more and recovered their abilities to a very high performance ability. Now, you don't naturally practice in basically receiving in accurate ways the language that I'm delivering to you now. You don't practice it anymore. You practice it when you were a kid. You're not practicing it now. You don't practice in the ways that are required to maintain the high fidelity processing of brain because we don't do it instinctively, especially in a modern life. So one of the reasons that our processes become noisier as we get older is that we're, in a sense, not practicing enough. Now, another reason is the very reason that we're here, and that's technology. And technology is all about providing us with a life that we can live that doesn't require living life without the rather troublesome requirement of having much of a brain. So these are all wonderful things. The average American citizen watches a box like this on the upper left for about 7 hours a day. That's called taking in information without action. Okay, not all good. It's a wonderful tool. I love it, but in moderation. Or on the lower left, on the lower left we see a topographic map from a satellite, and what you see in red is the city of Baltimore, and in the lower left is the city of Washington. What you see in red are places where the sunlight does not hit the ground because it's all paved. And it's paved to make sure that every footfall is secure, that you're never surprised, that you can walk and sleepwalk, in fact, across the landscape of our city and not pay a bit of attention to it. And you've been doing it. Many of you have been doing that for quite a few years now. Wake up. Start paying attention. It's not good to sleepwalk through life. It's the same way we modernize our internal environments so we don't have to worry about a thing. No uncertainty in them. There's no bump on that floor. Everything is controlled. It's designed to be controlled. It's designed to remove our brains from having to worry about the details of what we see, hear, feel. It's wonderful. Nothing better. I use Google for an hour or 2 or 3 every day in my work and in my life. What a wonderful tool. But what does it do? It reduces exercise in thought to the momentary process of looking up information. Wonderful asset used in moderation. So we don't have to know where we are in the world anymore. Our brains are constructed to reconstruct our modern environments in detail. And now we can have someone tell us from a distant satellite exactly where we are in the world. And so does our hippocampus, a critical organ that goes to heck in our old life, deteriorate as a consequence. So we're also adding noise by the way we live our life. But fortunately, we can compensate. And we can compensate by training our brains in a recovering direction. And we can use technology to do that. So what needs practice? How do you reverse age-related cognitive decline? Well, you have to work on those elemental skills and abilities that support accurate listening, vision, balance, the body senses, and action control. And you also have to regularly exercise the brain's learning machinery, because if you haven't been learning enough, it's slowly dying off. So you have to reinvigorate it. This is really important. So it's all about reestablishing your ability to see and operate in the world in all of its glorious details, and of exercising the learning machinery itself. We accomplish that in part, or we help people accomplish that in part, by constructing computer-based exercises that use these basic strategies to try to drive these changes in a brain with high efficiency. So these exercises that and some of these are available in computers for you to look at today in this wonderful meeting, provide the easiest and the most efficient way to get this help. Brain exercise programs on your home computer. They're adaptive, so they're constructed to individualize training so that all the time you spend at training is useful. It quickly adjusts to your level of difficulty so everyone can operate successfully or effectively with it, and it drives you as far as it can in a corrective or improving direction. It's optimized for the fastest brain improvement. It's actually constructed so that you get the most bang for your buck for the minute spent in training on a computer. It's extensive because there's a lot to fix in the average older brain, or you could say a lot to strengthen. So you have to get to a lot of targets that relate to the complex operations that apply to receiving information, accurately interpreting it, remembering it, and using it in complex operations and thought in the control of actions. And then it's important that the outcomes or the benefits of this be confirmed. So with the help of scientists across the world, we've conducted very elaborate outcome trials that are like an FDA standard trial, a gold standard trial, that affirm that you actually do receive the benefit that the program is designed to deliver, at least on the statistical average. You should understand that everybody doesn't have an equal benefit from anything like this. The brain's too complex for this, but the average person benefits substantially from doing this in life. You can find out information from that by going to positscience.com. But you can also find out information from that for those of you who are coming to the workshop that my daughter Margie and I are delivering this afternoon. And at that workshop, we'll show you some of those exercises, and we'll also provide more information to you about them. And of course, I said again, some of these exercises on computers here at the meeting. Now, how would these exercises benefit you? What do we know from the science? And you can go to positscience.com and you can see the scientific references and see where the studies were done at different research universities, the Mayo Clinic and Harvard and the other places, and see what the confirmation is all about. Well, first of all, we can see that it improves your basic spirits. That is to say, you're more engaged, you're brighter, your states of arousal or engagement are stronger. And second of all, we've confirmed that your memory is improved. And memory improvement translates to improvement of about, in the current state of programs, at about 14 years on the average. So if a person is 70 on the average, after they're trained, the improvement would give them a memory level of an average person of about 56. Now we're trying to be better than that, but that's about the state of what we see to this point. We see faster and sharper thinking and acting. So basically, you're faster in almost everything you do that involves making a decision about what it is you've just seen or heard or acting on it in a complex behavior. We see improvements in self-confidence. So basically, this is an important thing from the point of view of your operations in life, and certainly important from the point of view of your sustaining your independence. We see safer driving. That's kind of an interesting thing, right? A person appropriately trained sees things so much better that they have about half as many driving accidents. Not just sees them, but is able to respond at speeds so that they can respond appropriately. It makes a big difference in the safety of driving and also walking. We see improvements in health. So the average person that's trained actually spends about $300 less a year in healthcare costs. Really interesting. But that's because the brain training actually confers benefits into brain health, but also to physical health in the body in ways that relate to the brain controlling the body. We see improvement in sustained independence, which is critical, and we see greater powers of personal growth. Now, these are among things that have been confirmed in these scientific experiments in an important and a carefully validated way. And remember, these are statistical arguments. Everyone won't benefit in the same degree. Some people benefit more, some people benefit less. You should always understand that. So what else should I be doing? What else should you be doing in life? And this is a very long list, and this is very small writing, isn't it? Who would make a list like this for a meeting in the hall like this? What an insane thing. Okay. First of all, it's important that through life, and especially in older life, you continue to acquire new skills and abilities, that you continue learning. And in a sense, the more serious these are for you, the more important they are, and it could be anything. Take up the harmonica, develop better expertise in another language you've always wanted to learn, but whatever it is, take that learning seriously. Seek new adventures and experiences. The brain loves surprises. The brain loves adventures. It loves the challenge of the unexpected problem. Older people sometimes don't like to travel because they could run into trouble and there could be problems. Why? The brain loves that. It feeds on that. It wants that. Give it to it. Reconnect with the real world. Smell the flower. Look at the details of the bug. Get out there and live life again as if you're a kid. Enjoy it in all of its glorious details. And look for the little surprises that are out there in the garden or by the path or wherever you are in your home, whatever. Schedule daily social exercise. Some people can't get out. It's not easy for them to get out, so meet people. Skype them. Look them in the eye and smile and laugh with them. You don't even have to be outside to do that anymore. What a wonderful thing. But daily social exercise is critical. We're social beings and creatures. You've got to exercise it. Spread kindness. Promote joy. You know, whenever you give something to someone in an act of kindness, you get just as much reward in your brain and just as much exercise in your brain as you get when you feel that flush when somebody does something for you. Spread kindness, promote joy. It's brain healthy to do that. Adopt a serious approach to new learning. The brain is smart enough not to change a thing if it doesn't matter to it. So make it matter to it. Be serious about changing your brain for the better. And finally, if you can, and everyone can't do this, take a hike, take a walk, go on a bike for at least 20 or 30 minutes every day. And when you're doing that, connect yourself with the world. Don't put on the earbuds and space out. Smell it, look at it, check it out, say hi to it, shake hands with it, live with it, and you'll enjoy every moment of it, and your brain will enjoy it. You have the power within you. You have the power within your brain. You have been given this great gift by the creator of the universe, or by Mother Nature, or some combination thereof, to change your life for the better, to be better tomorrow than you are today, to be a lot better a year from now than you are today. Use this resource. Regardless of your circumstances, use this resource if you can. And work to improve yourself, because you'll have a better, happier life in the end, almost no matter what your circumstances or your neurological burdens. So use this resource and have lots of fun doing it. I hope you see it out in the street on one of my morning walks or bike rides. Thank you very much.
My goodness, what a rich day. I mean, we can all have hope and and not be fearful about anything. And we take that attitude that we can really reverse things. Gee, I'm not going to tell them what my next birthday is going to be. You think I should? You go anywhere on the internet, it always starts with Belva Davis was born in 1932. And one woman looked up at me and she says, "Dear?" And then she found out it was okay, she thought. Anyway, to let you know that we can all have the ability to do whatever we want to do, I'm delighted to introduce now Mary Toomey. She's, when she's not rapping like, language, she is the co-director of the National Center on Elder Abuse at the Center of Excellence and Elder Abuse and Neglect. the University of California, Irvine. Before coming to UCI, Mary was director of the San Francisco Consortium for Elder Abuse Prevention, a program of the Institute on Aging from 2000 to 2007. I'm proud to serve on that board, Mary. Mary has her MSW from Catholic University in Washington. Her rapping career started with her first song, Yo, There's No Excuse for Elder Abuse. Mary?
So I'm very happy to be here to talk to you all a little bit about elder abuse. You know, there's about 5 million people. We'll get that a little louder. Oh, you want me to rap? Wait a minute. I need some help because my brain plasticity is not too good. So I'm going to need your help, all right? Turn to page 21. Yo, yo, yo. All right? Maybe you want to stand up a little bit, get the blood running. All right, 21. Little Tai Chi. Okay, so everybody listen up and join me if you can. I want to stay connected, there's a big old world out there. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, emails flying through the air. I may be over 60, but I love those MP3s. I'm a savvy cyber user, come on and FaceTime me. All right, now you want to FaceTime me. All right, you're going to FaceTime, here we go. All right. 1, 2, I read the paper on my iPad and I surf the net for free. My favorite cyber cafe is the public library. I write to all my homies up in Sacto and DC. No stamps, no paper, but they know the addressee. I'm a savvy cyber user and I'm great with advocacy. I know you are. We got to keep in front of those people. We got to tell them what we're thinking. We got to use the internet for advocacy, democracy. All right, now, but here's where we get to have to be savvy. You got to be savvy cyber users, right? I got an email from Nigeria, said, I want $1 million. I may have a disability, but I'm not a sitting duck. The email says a check will come made out just to me. Next, they'll be asking for my password and ID. I'm a savvy cyber user, so what do? Press delete. Press that delete button. Looks too good to be true? It is a scam. Scams and frauds. All right, let's go back to verse 1. And we're going to say we now. Okay, ready? Here we go. We want to. We want to stay connected. There's a big old world out there. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, emails flying through the air. I may be over 60, but I love those MP3s. We are savvy cyber users. Come on and FaceTime us. Come on now. You FaceTime us? I know you're going to be wanting Googling us later, right? All right. Everybody stay safe out there. Stay safe out there in the internet world. Take care. Yo, yo.